Imagine waking up and discovering that the greatest naval power on the planet is no longer the United States. That is exactly what is happening in silence, far from the spotlight of Western media. China, which just a few decades ago wasn't even taken seriously at sea, today displays a fleet that not only rivals, but has already surpassed the US Navy in numbers. More than 370 warships against about 296 from the United States. Does it seem like just statistics? It's not. It is the most dramatic shift in balance since World War II. And what draws attention is not only the quantity but the speed. While American shipyards struggle to deliver one vessel at a time, Beijing operates like an unstoppable assembly line, capable of producing up to 16 different ships simultaneously. It's the difference between a system adapted for conflict and an entire civilization mobilized to project global power. At the heart of this new navy are the Chinese aircraft carriers. The Fujian, a technological jewel launched recently, has already sailed through the Taiwan Strait in September 2025, sending a direct message not only to Taipei, but also to Washington. We are ready to contest control of the seas. Alongside it, advanced destroyers, silent submarines and armed corvettes turn the Asia-Pacific into a chessboard where every move can redefine the world order. What Beijing is building is not just a fleet, it's a message. A message that says the 21st century will not be dominated by the United States without resistance. The question is, how far can this expansion go before the world wakes up to the inevitable clash of powers? And before continuing, tell me in the comments, do you believe the United States still has a way to maintain naval supremacy? Or has China's navy already become the true terror of the oceans? To understand how Beijing overtook the US Navy, it is necessary to look beyond the numbers and see the engine of this transformation: industrial capacity. While Washington faces bureaucracy, inflated budgets and delays that stretch for years, China built the largest naval industry on the planet. Colossal shipyards working 24 hours a day produce warships as if they were cars on an assembly line. According to estimates, China's shipbuilding capacity is 230 times greater than America's. This means that while the United States carefully plans the launch of a destroyer, China manages to put dozens of vessels into the water simultaneously, from fast corvettes to nuclear submarines. This industrial scale is not just impressive, it redefines the game. Because at sea, numbers also mean power, and Beijing is not building ships just to patrol its coastal waters. The declared goal is to have a blue water navy by 2050, capable of operating in any ocean on the planet. It is not about defense, it is about global projection. Each new aircraft carrier, each new submarine launched, is a step toward directly challenging US control over international maritime routes, vital for trade and the security of American allies. The numbers speak for themselves. More than 40 destroyers, more than 50 frigates, about 60 submarines, in addition to aircraft carriers and amphibious assault ships capable of carrying entire battalions. This is the backbone of a navy no longer limited to the South China Sea. We are talking about a growing presence in the Indian Ocean, in the Pacific, and even joint exercises in the Atlantic with strategic partners. The question many ask is, did the United States underestimate China's determination? Because while the Americans were focused on wars in the Middle East and internal disputes, Beijing worked silently, year after year, until reaching the point it is at now. And that point is no longer just rivalry, it is superiority in several areas. Nothing shows Beijing's new confidence more clearly than the crossing of the Fujian aircraft carrier through the Taiwan Strait in September 2025. It wasn't a routine drill, it was a calculated demonstration of strength. A message to the world that China no longer fears showing its cards. The Fujian is unlike anything the plan has ever operated. Equipped with electromagnetic catapults, technology previously mastered only by the United States, it symbolizes China's definitive entry into the elite club of navies. That passage wasn't only about military power, it was a symbolic act, a reminder that Taiwan remains the most explosive point of Asian geopolitics. With every maneuver in the strait, Beijing shows that it can surround the island and challenge the US. Presence in the region. Not coincidentally, at the same time the Fujian crossed those waters, the Chinese Coast Guard intensified its incursions into Kinmen, testing Taipei's patience. But China's navy goes beyond pressure on Taiwan. It is part of a strategy to break the U.S. monopoly of the seas. Today, routes connecting Gulf oil to Asia or African trade to Europe pass through corridors where U.S. naval presence has always been dominant. Beijing knows that if it cannot protect those supply lines, its economy remains vulnerable. That's why every ship launched is also a piece of a larger puzzle, ensuring that China is never again at the mercy of blockades or maritime sanctions. The most concerning factor is that this modernization comes alongside a nuclear expansion. With submarines capable of carrying long-range missiles, China is building not just a conventional deterrence fleet, but also a strategic one. This changes Washington's calculation. It is no longer just about losing regional hegemony, but about risking confrontation with a rival that has global-level destructive capacity. Beijing no longer hides its objectives, and every naval movement is designed to send a message. The century of oceans dominated by Washington is ending. The question now is no longer if there will be confrontation, but when. Faced with this overwhelming expansion, the United States is not standing still. Washington knows that losing naval supremacy means giving up the backbone of its global power. But the problem is that Americans face a dilemma. While China builds fast and cheap, each new U.S. ship costs billions of dollars and takes years to complete. It is the difference between a power that works like a total war industry and another trapped by bureaucracy and politics. The United States still maintains a qualitative advantage in technology, nuclear propulsion systems, more advanced carrier-based fighters, and real combat experience. But the question is, how long will this advantage manage to compensate for the difference in absolute numbers of ships? In a prolonged conflict, numbers matter, and China seems ready to sustain a pace that Washington can hardly match. The warning already echoes through the corridors of the Pentagon. If nothing changes, American naval supremacy may be history by the end of the decade. And don't be fooled, this is not only about the Pacific, it is about the entire international order. Now I want to know your opinion. Do you believe U.S. technology can still hold back the Chinese Navy? Or are we already witnessing the rise of a new dominant sea power? China's naval advance is not limited to a military challenge, it is reshaping the entire geopolitical board. Each ship launched is also a diplomatic tool, capable of projecting influence far beyond Asia. Beijing already sends frigates to escort routes in the Indian Ocean, participates in drills in the South Pacific, and more recently has even appeared in joint maneuvers in the Mediterranean. The message is clear. China's navy is not confined to the South China Sea. It is becoming global. This has immediate effects. Southeast Asian countries like Indonesia and the Philippines accelerated military modernization programs, fearing the region would turn into a Chinese sea. Meanwhile, in Africa, Beijing's naval presence secures access to strategic resources and strengthens the Belt and Road Initiative. For many developing governments, receiving Chinese ships is not a threat, but an opportunity for protection against piracy and leverage in investments. And here is the most critical point. The Chinese Navy does not act alone. It operates in parallel with air expansion, nuclear growth, and economic tools. It is a complete package of pressure and influence. When Beijing moves its fleet, it is not just training sailors. It is negotiating deals, intimidating rivals, and buying allies. The sea, which has always been the space of U.S. dominance, is turning into the new arena where Beijing tests its power. And the world slowly begins to realize that this is no longer about regional rivalry. It is a game of planetary scale. China's naval rise has an inevitable side effect: a regional arms race. Every destroyer launched in Shanghai makes neighboring countries rush to buy new missiles, aircraft, and submarines. The Philippines, Japan, Australia, and India are already adapting their military doctrines to a scenario in which U.S. supremacy is no longer guaranteed. The result is an unstable environment where any miscalculation can turn into open conflict. A simple incident in the South China Sea, a Filipino ship rammed, a U.S. jet intercepted, a Chinese frigate advancing further than expected, could ignite a spark impossible to extinguish. And with arsenals growing larger and more sophisticated, the risk is not just of a limited clash, but of global escalation. Washington knows this and tries to react by strengthening alliances. The Quad with India, Japan and Australia, and AUKUS with the UK and Australia are clear attempts to contain China's expansion. But time runs against the United States. While meetings are scheduled and protocols discussed, China has already launched more ships. That is the danger of an asymmetric race. One side bets on slow diplomacy, the other on mass production. And in the end, the one who sets the pace is the one who can put more steel in the water.